for 2020 and 15% for 2021.
Okay, so that's what you guys say the market did. It's up 15% last year.
In certain areas.
In certain areas, yeah.
Yeah, and the first part of this, I'm going to talk about what we've done to measure that. And
Hopefully not 15%.
I think it was more.
Yeah, I bet it was.
I think it was more. How much time do I have?
Well, I actually booked out an hour, but
Okay,
whatever.
I'll stick around for questions. So I don't think going through the PowerPoint.
Sure. Yeah, and then what, obviously, whatever questions.
You can always complain.
You give my wife batches, I would go for it.
Did the tax notices go out for Pennington? And then me coming.
Saturday and now.
Wait, have you been called like crazy?
Assessment notices go out March 1st, and I'll talk about that.
Okay.
We sent them to the printer yesterday.
So the tax amount that we
The
would-
tax bill comes out January 1st, but Newt County and Custer County are not so good at getting them out on January 1st. So I don't know when they're doing tax.
Mine came out, but not, mine came here just the other day.
The assessed value.
That's in March, right?
That's what I thought. It's coming, right?
Yeah, we sent it to the printer yesterday.
Okay.
So I don't, in the next day or two, they'll get it printed in mail.
That's when we'll get them.
Well, that's what we were talking about. And I'm curious to hear.
I said next session is what I'll.
And you were the Black Lake board, which I missed that one. I was supposed to
Texted
know
me.
So, your presentation last month.
Absolutely.
So,
Who says no to a blizzard?
I've been in Rapid since 2008.
Okay.
I started in
The taxes that are being increased.
Right.
On those assessed values.
Do you have your copies of everything for the meeting? So I wiped all the
And I
copies
know,
in there.
remember Sandra Ruddy, still talking to her on Scott?
Yeah.
And then I reprinted
Yep.
all the.
She used to be on the planning commission, so I'd see her.
Oh, that's true.
Every now and then. She has some kind of health problems.
Yeah.
I talked to her once and I just on the way over here, I was thinking I need to call her again.
I was just making notes like.
Yeah, she's saying.
For a layout plan, things that were kind of, should that really be there? And that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
So we,
Yeah.
Okay.
Thinking through
Yep.
now and then.
is not-
Yeah, I'm sure you work with those guys more.
Okay, yeah, so when we go up there.
Doesn't really work on properties that sold, properties that are available. So we give him data for that.
Got it, that's right.
So we're doing yeah.
Come on in.
I kind of think that's good. Yeah. Oh, it's a protein shake. I haven't had
That's right.
much. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, actually, what do we call this? They're going for surgery.
He's not had.
Now I'm.
Well,
One right now, but he's like, yeah, you're 6 months.
I thought he's texting me all the time.
Whatever. But I went up to Dr. Little this morning and saw him.
Made her day a whole lot better.
Yeah.
That's about what my. You want me to do it? Standing there.
Yeah. Okay. And Frank, Joe. Yeah.
I'm fine with that. We got a lot of stuff going on between now and first. Hey, About those lots.
And whenever you wanna start.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody just tell Tim, he'll share that screen.
Chips and.
Oh, really?
Furniture.
A lot of trees that are down. Be interesting, maybe you'll not all.
It's really.
Oh,
it's really
yeah.
bad right now, 'cause there's a lot of it. So.
But that's not. Yeah. You gotta hold. Well, because he was terrible.
There's plenty of people that
Yeah, and he said, oh, somebody came over, there was a guy that said, let me remove.
I have no idea.
And then we'll send.
Yeah. Hey, did your people out on Sudbury close on theirs yet?
There you go, young lady.
That lot, you did close on it?
Yeah.
We're kind of keep delaying those just a little bit. Just a couple more things done up there,
Or you're just waiting to see.
but they're waiting for that road to be finished a little bit more. I mean, it's gonna happen. Well, replat 6 and 7, it was 5 and 6.
2x2.
Family,
I'll sit by Mark.
mom and kids.
I mailed on, because I gotta run the computer. No, no, I'm good. Okay. I gotta run the computer.
Most of the tax.
I know, Sean.
Oh, yeah, wasn't.
Which one?
Just like.
Oh, okay, okay. Roundabout, okay. so I didn't-
Everybody, who didn't
Yeah,
get, Anna,
no, we're in the
did you get one of
cul-de-sac.
these?
No, no, no.
Scott?
We're in the cul-de-sac.
Am I unmuted?
You've never been either.
Yeah, we know where you're at. And the people online, we'll get you this, we'll email you this material. What Shannon's got most of everything on a PowerPoint, so it won't be PDF, it will be in color. Yeah, no. I can even stand up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Get some water. When I go back to the office, I'll email you the PowerPoint and this brochure we created.
Okay.
The map is on, I printed that off this morning,
Okay,
so it's an internet link, but I at least emailed
that's all good. It's going to pick you up on this, Shannon, as far as,
you. You'll be standing over there?
I mean, the hearing your voice for online.
Okay.
So try to be kind of loud. No, you don't have to, but just kind of talk loudish.
Okay,
Talk loudish. You'll talk loudish. And we'll probably get started in one more minute if you could, because it's always victorious. It's always 1:05 or something like this. Yeah, that's true, right?
Everybody started.
I know, I should say, okay, it's at 12:55.
People adapt, they just do.
yeah.
They don't.
I doubt it.
Somebody else walked in.
There's just
There you
Yeah.
I don't even see.
You got spots on here?
Yeah.
Go, brush them.
It was.
And I literally talked to every player, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota, Colorado. Let's go to 9 of them. Because of that extra allocation based on higher sales.
How are we doing on seats? We got a couple left.
Showered.
I think we can get going, Shannon. Okay, hang on, guys, can you hear? If you have trouble hearing Shannon or whatever, raise hand, throw it in the chat, whatever. And we'll just get started. Shannon, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Shannon Ritter. I am the Director of Equalization in Pennington County, the county assessor. I've been doing this job in Rapid since 2008 and since doing this job since 2001. I was in Belfouche before I came here. Before that, I was a real estate appraiser. I did appraisals in Montana. Now I'm responsible for appraising property for property tax purposes. And hopefully theme you get out of this is I don't set taxes. What I'm going to talk about is to start with what our market did, and I ain't going to spend too much time on that because I think all of you know our market went up, right? But then I'm going to talk about how that impacts taxes. So of this handout, well, first, a couple of notes. We mail assessment notices. Those were sent to the printer yesterday, or at least we approved the proof. We send assessment notice electronic file. It goes to a company in Sioux Falls that deals with printing and mailing, so we don't have to deal with the bulk mail regulations. We don't know when they'll print them and mail them, but assuming that'll get done in the next couple of days, so you'll probably get your assessment notice in the mail, guessing Monday. The law requires we do it by March 1st, and I think that's Tuesday. We weren't early this year. Look for that. That is what your property is worth. State law requires that we assess it at full market value, not a percentage of, but full. And I think this year, on an overall gross average, we're going to be running about 97, 98% of market value. That's your assessment notice. Now you'll pay taxes on that next year. Your tax bill for last year's assessment should have come out right after the 1st of January. Typically, they come out a couple days before January because you can pay taxes on January 1st, but we were a little bit late in Pennington County this year. It was a couple days after the 1st. I don't know where Meade County and Custer County are at. They're usually later than we are. Well, that's tax bill, an assessment notice. The first 2 pages of this handout is a handout we created to try to cover the county with it. People don't appeal their assessed value. They appeal the change from one year to the next. We could have $1 million on their trailer house, but if it didn't change from last year, you wouldn't appeal it. It's always the change. And there's something around 10% or less that seems to be acceptable. This year, it's going to be way more than that. Our market went up. So we created this handout to just tell people, this is what we see our market has done. Now, you guys say the market went up 15% last year. In here, you'll see where I say I think it went up 17%, but it really depends on how you measure that number. And it certainly depends on location. The almighty pine tree, that makes a big difference in value. But this just tells you our market went up, and we're trying to get that out to alert the public to expect a bigger than normal increase in our market. I've got this. This is something I just printed this morning. One of my appraisers found this online. It is a U.S. House Price Index report from the Federal Housing Finance Agency. And it just shows you how we compare to the states around us. According to this, house prices went up 20% in South Dakota this last year. Notice that Minnesota is only 12%. Wyoming is.
You can bring it up and then just print it off. Yep. That'd be great.
So I provided this just so you can see how it compares to states around us. We're a lot higher than Minnesota, and I think that's because all of them are moving here. We've got a lot of people from Colorado moving here, and of course, the Californian everybody talks about. So that just tells you what we think our market did. We're just trying to alert people that the market went up more than it ever has. Normal for us in a year is what, 3 to 5% a year is kind of normal. And we're doing 15 to 20%. And I've got some numbers here that will show you what our assessment notices did for that. Something else we've noticed, not only did our market go up, but it's a lot more volatile than it has been in the past. We have to appraise 50,000 properties every year, and we use valuation models to do that quickly and efficiently and consistently across all properties. It's a little bit more difficult to apply a model to our market right now. You know, there's high sales and there's low sales, and sale price is not market value. Sale price is very specific to those two individuals on that day. And there's life situations that influence sale prices. So there's always a difference between sale price and market value, but that difference is bigger this year. There's a statistics that Board of Realtor measure that's sold price as a percentage of asking price. And last year, the average of that was just over 100%. Properties are selling for more than asking price. In an environment where a realtor, the greatest creature on earth, working on a commission, sets the asking price and comes in low, that's just crazy. Okay, but we're seeing that out there. People are paying, you can't look at a house and say 242,000. Now, maybe you couldn't do that last year or the year before, but at least you were a lot closer than what you are now. And we have that problem when we're appraising these properties. The market is a lot more volatile as well as higher. And that makes our job difficult. Okay, now let's get into PowerPoint. How do we do that?
We're doing her. Here. There was a couple of people who had some link issues, so that's what I was doing. So I sent the right link, so it'll get hooked in here. But you should be sharing. You guys can see the screen, thumbs up. Okay, good. So you should be good.
Okay, so I want to talk about how does this rising real estate market affect property taxes? Because that's a huge concern to property owners out there. But I want to start with some numbers here, and these I just calculated these this morning. This wasn't at the presentation that I did at the Civic Center. This is the percentage change on improved residential properties. Not every property, but improved residential properties, the change in the valuation from last year to this year. The number you'll see on your assessment notice, okay? Because our market went up. This is the percentage change. Where's most of them? 33% of, I think it's 31,000 improved residential properties are going to see a 15 to 20% change from last year's assessment notice to this year. So most of them, 55, 65, 68% are going to change between 10 and 25%. That's what we're seeing in assessment notices this year. Now, there's some down here. Can you move that back up?
Sure.
518 properties, more than double from last year to this year. But this includes growth in there, not just simple reappraisal. So a lot of those that more than doubled, somebody improved a house or built a house. I have some big changes. You know, you take a bare piece of land, build a house on it, it's 1,000% increase, right? Well, so that growth is included in there. But what I'm gonna start telling people is expect somewhere around 20 to 30% change from last year's assessment to this year's assessment, just to keep us at that 97, 98% of market value. So our market, you said 15%. I'm thinking 17, maybe 20. But this is what our assessment notices are doing. Right? And we are appraising as of last November 1st. So our market's higher now than it was back then. This is as of November 1st. There we go.
Is there a way to hide this bar?
Anybody?
Okay.
Okay, so I want to go over the steps in the assessment and the tax process. So the first step is my office appraises all of the properties. We have, when we're fully staffed, 15 appraisers on staff that appraise properties. And we are required to appraise at full market value. Once we've got those properties appraised, we mail out assessment notices, and the property owner has the chance to appeal, right? And that appeal process takes place in March and April. Then the county commission approves or denies all applications for exemptions from property tax, churches, charities, other kinds of organizations like that. So first we appraise all property at market value. We deal with the appeal process. There's always things about properties we don't know about. If you've got a house with a cracked basement and we don't know that, then that's not being taken accounted for in your assessment, right? The appeal process winds up with a lot of changes that it should have, all right? But we get better information. Once we've got all of the properties appraised, now we know what the total taxable value in the county is. The next step is all of the taxing entities have to set their budgets, and they hold budget hearings. The county starts in about May or June, and they hold budget hearings through October, either the first or the end of October. I think it's 1st October. And every taxing entity, the county, the city, the school, road districts, water districts, they all have to set their budget. Now, maybe the road district meets once, I don't know, but the county meets several times. They need to set the amount of budget they need to provide the government services that their public demands. Now, property tax is only a portion of the budget. For Pennington County, property tax is only about like 45% of the total budget. There's more money from other sources. With the city, it's even less because the city gets sales tax, which is a big bone of contention between the city and the county because the county doesn't get sales tax. Once we've set the taxable value for the county and all of those taxing entities have set their budgets, then we calculate the levy. And the way that works is this is how much value we have to tax, and this is how much tax we want to take from this value. The levy is just a factor that gives us this much tax money out of this much value. All right, it's a mathematical calculation. Politicians like to talk about how they set the levy. They don't set the levy, they set the budget. I set the taxable value and they set the budget. And then all of that, the levy's calculated once budgets are submitted, I think by the 1st of October, and then the county auditor has to calculate those levies. And we print and mail tax bills January 1st of next year. And you can pay on January 1st, or most people pay April and October. Okay, so as far as budget requests, the county auditor likes to call them requests. The governing board of each taxing entity holds budget hearings. The board decides how much property tax to collect to provide those government services. The county has to plow roads, pay cop salary, fund the jail. The city does some of the same stuff. Okay, every year they have to set their budget based on what they need to do. Taxes collected are determined by that budget, not by the rise in the taxable value or the real estate market. A lot of people think that when the market goes up, there's more money going to the county and the school and the city. And that's not the case. Every year, those entities set their budgets and determine how much they're going to take. When our market goes up 30%, it's not like a windfall of taxes to the government entities. They set their budgets. And these are some of the tax districts: the county, the cities, the township, the schools, road district, ambulance districts, rural fire, water, water projects, sanitary. There are well over 100 tax districts in Pennington County. Now, there are limitations on those budgets that those taxing entities can set. They can't just set whatever budget they want. There are limitations set in state law. Your budget can only increase 3% more than what it was last year, or the consumer price index, whichever's less. If the consumer price index is 1%, your budget can only be 1% more than it was last year. It can also increase by the amount of taxes that will be collected from new property that's added to the tax roll. The theory there is we're going to cap your budgets at a 3% increase. But when you get a bunch of new houses, that's going to put a greater demand on your services, so you can raise your budget by an amount equal to what the new property will pay. Now, that 3% overall increase will raise the levy on everybody. Okay. The increase due to that new growth, that's just more people sharing in the tax burden. So it doesn't mean the rest of us are going to pay more taxes. The budget will go up by the same amount that the new property's paying. The rest of us pay the same amount. But when they raise their budget 3%, we all pay 3% more, right?
Shannon, sorry to interrupt, but do you see most budgets come in 3% higher?
Oh, yeah.
Year after year?
Oh, yeah.
Assuming that's what they do.
Because that growth number is a big factor, because that 3% just isn't enough to do what they want to do. Fuel prices have gone up, wages have gone up. It's pretty difficult to stay within that 3% or less cap. So yeah, almost always they increase their budgets by the maximum amount they can. They don't have to, but they can. And they do. Now, an exception to these limitations on what their budget can increase is the opt-out. And an opt-out is an opt-out on those limitations. So one of those tax districts can, the board can vote to opt out for $150,000 a year for 5 years to pay for this. Now, that opt-out can be referred to a vote, and if it's voted down, they can't do that. And the famous example of that's what the school district did here a couple of years ago. I can't remember. It failed, didn't it? Yeah, okay. It doesn't have to go to a vote. The board can choose to put it to a vote, or it could be referred if they don't choose to put it to a vote. But that's always a possibility. And opt-outs, a lot of times, fail. But that is an exception. Otherwise, 3% or less, that's all your budget can increase over last year. Now, you can lower your budget. You don't have to raise your budget. It always does that. Taxes always go up, right? But this is important because they can only increase their budget by 3% or less. And our market just went up 20%. Okay.
So if, let's use the numbers you just did, let's just use a nice round number, 20%, houses increases, CPI or whatever you're using, 3%. So is our mill levy
Has to go down.
supposedly will go down
Not
17%?
supposedly, yeah.
17%?
And that's round numbers.
Yeah, let's use round numbers.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
And that's the key that I want to get through to this. Your assessment went up 20% doesn't mean your taxes are going up 20% because budgets are capped. Okay, taxes probably going to go up, sure, but maybe not 20%. Probably not 20%. Here's the formulas. So assessed value times the taxable factor gives us taxable value. Taxable value is what you see on your tax bill. Assessed value is what you see on your assessment notice. Assessed value is supposedly full market value, what you could sell your property for. The state audits the accuracy of our total assessment, and they give us a factor to reduce wherever our level is down to 85%. So taxable value should be 85% of market value, but that's where we get that factor. Okay, budget request divided by total taxable value equals the levy. then total taxable value times the levy equal taxes due on your property. So here's how. That's so easy. Here's how this works. Total taxable value went up 20%, right? Budget request can only go up 3%. So that number has to go down so that you don't get more money than what you can collect. Okay? Now, I say politicians like to say they set the levy. They don't set the levy. They set the budget request over here. I set the total taxable value. If total taxable value goes up a lot, the levy has to go down to stay within the budgetary caps. Here's just some numbers in there. So our budget is $1 million, and we're going to collect that out of $70 million worth of taxable value. The levy is just 0.014286. This will give us $1 million out of this. So will taxes increase if assessed values increase? Okay, yes, but taxes increase when budgets increase. If I double the assessed value of every property in the county, but the county, the school, and the city keep their budget exactly the same as it was last year, the levy has to be half to give them the same amount of tax money, right? Okay. When they raise their budget, even if I kept assessed values exactly the same and I took a year off and we did nothing, and they raise their budget, your taxes are going to go up, even though your assessment didn't change. Because budget went up, so the levy has to go up to collect more taxes. Okay? If assessed values do not change, but budgets increase, taxes will increase. If assessed value increase, but budgets remain unchanged, the levy will decrease and taxes will not change. A significant increase in the market does not result in a windfall to the taxing entities. And that's the whole point of this presentation, because there's a lot of people out there that think our market goes up, so the government's going to get more money. And that just doesn't happen. Okay, not in South Dakota. In some other states, it does to a lot of extent, but not in South Dakota because we have those caps. Property taxes are budgeted based on the need, regardless of the change in the assessment. If our market was flat, there's still a budget demand for wages and fuel and all of that. So they'll still take that 3%, even if our real estate market was flat.
Is that a state 3%?
Yeah,
Or
it's
is
a
that per
state
county?
law.
Okay, I didn't know if it was state
Yep.
for sure. If it was-
Yep, it's a state law. Okay, now, half of the property tax you pay goes to the school district. About a quarter goes to the county and about a quarter goes to the city, round numbers. Then there's water districts and ambulance districts and road districts that are all a little part of it. But most of your property tax bill goes to the school. So we like to blame a lot of taxes on schools. Most of it goes there. But all of them are bound by these same budgetary caps all across the state. Now this last one down here, property, this is my disclaimer. Property tax changes on individual properties will vary based on the difference from the average assessment change. So that second slide that I showed you with all of the numbers, I said most of the properties change somewhere between 20 and 35%. I think the overall average was 29%. So let's say the overall on improved residential properties, the average change from last year's assessment notice to this year's was an increase of 29%. Okay, your taxes are not going to go up 29%. Maybe they go up 3% or whatever. However, if the average change was 29%, but yours went up 49%, your taxes are going up more than everybody else because yours changed more than the average, right? Okay, and that happens because our market reacts differently in different locations and on different types of properties. And We like to say we get better at what we do. This year, I will say the assessed value on your property is accurate. Next year, I'm gonna abandon that. Yeah, I don't, whatever, it's right now, okay? Because we constantly find properties that are either over or under assessed, and they change more than the average. We look at neighborhoods, we do reappraisal projects where we walk down the sidewalk and we look at houses in the neighborhood. And we make sure we've got the right data, because properties are changing all the time, right? And the neighborhoods that we don't go down the sidewalk, we still have to reappraise all of those houses. And we're constantly finding where we're too high or too low on a house for whatever reason, and we fix it. It's right this year. What we do not do is we do not put a 20% blanket change to all properties. That would be a poor practice in mass appraisal. Some counties do that, but we don't. We're better than that. So if your house was too low last year, it's coming up more than the average. If it was too high last year, it didn't go up as much as the average. But that's my disclaimer. So the average, I said, was 29%. If your property increases more than that, yeah, your taxes are going to go up more than that 3%. I think that is the last slide. Yeah, so if you have any questions?
Do you guys appraise properties 12 months out of the year?
So this is what we do. We just set our assessment. We're gonna, the assessment notice will go out in the mail, and we have to deal with appeals in March and April. And at the end of April, we're done with all of those appeals, and the assessed value is set and cannot be changed. So if you think your assessment is wrong, you've got that limited time frame to appeal, and then it's set. And then that budgeting process takes place. And what we do then is in May, June, July, August, maybe September, then we're doing our reappraisal projects. So we measure the accuracy of our values by neighborhood. We compare assessed value to sale price on every property that sells. And we identify neighborhoods where we're more off. And that might be because the neighborhood's changing. People are remodeling or building or whatever, or values just change by location. So every year we identify several neighborhoods to do a reappraisal project where we walk down the sidewalk, and that's what we spend the summer doing. And all we're doing is collecting data and making sure we got the right data on those properties. And then September, October, because November 1st is our assessment date, we go out and we measure, take a picture of all the new houses, and we put all the new houses on the tax roll. And then in November, December, January, it's a whole bunch of statistical analysis, because now we've collected our data and we think we've got the right data on all of the properties, and we're measuring what is everything selling for and how does it change by neighborhood. And November, December, January, we're actually appraising all of those properties in time to print that assessment notice.
How far back do you go in your comparable? So in other words, if you did an appraisal, you tried 3 months, right?
We got 3 years worth of sales in our database.
Okay.
They're time adjusted. So we are using 3 years worth of sales data that's time adjusted.
What does that mean?
Well, okay, so we've got the county split up into over 100 market areas, and most of them you guys have recognized. Robbinsdale, North Rapid, Chapel Valley. Chapel Valley is a neighborhood. North Rapid is actually a market area made up of multiple neighborhoods. Okay, so we got our neighborhoods grouped into a market area, and North Rapid is a market area made up of multiple neighborhoods, and we will look at all of those sales in North Rapid, and we will use all of those sales to create a valuation model that appraises all of the properties in that market area. And the sales database we use is 3 years worth of sales, but it time adjusts those older sales to appraise as of November 1st. Now, in addition to that, our computer system will find 5 comps, 5 comparable sales, just like any other appraiser working out there. It'll find the 5 most comparable sales to every subject property. But the number that goes out on the assessment notice is considering all of the sales in the market area. And we use 3 years worth of data. This year and a couple of years ago, we tried to run our numbers when we dropped and only used 2 years, and our values were the same. So more data is better. We're still using 3.
Does every county have that same system?
No,
Okay.
CAM assistant, computer assisted mass appraisal software. There's a couple counties in South Dakota that don't have a CAM system. Most of them do. There's 3 counties that are using the same software we are, and there's 5 types of software across South Dakota.
So does your evaluation on the comps, comparables, does that exclude cash and appraisal gaps and things like that?
Open market sales first, okay? A deed transfer due to a divorce, that's not an open market sale. So we exclude all of them that are not open market. So that gives us all of the open market sales. And then we eliminate some of the extreme outliers. There's always high sales and there's low sales. We don't want to eliminate all the high ones or all the low ones, but there's always some that are way out there, and we don't know why. It's an open market sale. But if it's an extreme outlier, we'll eliminate those. So I was looking at, I think it was North Rapid, we had 815 sales, but in our database, we only used 773 of them because we eliminated the extreme outliers. And for various reasons. And sometimes we don't know why it's an outlier. When we look at it, it looks like a good sale. And some of you might get a phone call from us where we'll call and say, why the heck did that sell so low? Hoping maybe you'll tell us something, and oh yeah, we don't want to use that sale. Sometimes we get, is what it is. Sometimes we can peg a low sale to a specific realtor. But we're appraisers. We like sales, so we don't want to reject sales, but you got to eliminate the extreme outliers.
Does your computer model just take assessed value at sales price most of the time in the given year that it's appraised?
Does it appraise at sale price, you mean?
Typically.
No. Nope. Doesn't consider that. So we're appraising at market value. Sale price is specific to those 2 people on that day. But that property that sold is an indication of market value. It's just one of the 800 sales that were considered. Okay. That's the best explanation. One of the sales that are considered. Now we measure when we create that valuation model. A model is a mathematical formula that represents the market, and the variables in that formula are all of the characteristics that we think influence value in our market. And for a house, it's size, age, location, bedrooms, bathrooms, basements, garages, all of that. Those are all variables in that. And that model calculates a value for every property. And of the properties that sold, we measure the difference between the model's value and sale price. And we measure the average difference between those 2 numbers. And I'll tell you this year, that difference is greater than it was last year because our market is just so volatile.
How much of the valuation is just based on human? I have a 40-year-old house sitting here, and all of a sudden 4 neighbors come in with brand new shiny fancy houses, and the guy walks through the neighborhood, and well, the 40-year-old house is going to go up because it's in this new fancy neighborhood that everybody wants to be.
It's market value. What appraisal is, market value is defined as what your property would typically sell for. So what I tell people is your property value is not going to go up because that house over there sold so high. But that's a symptom of what the market's doing. And if other houses are selling high, your property value's going up.
You have a handle on like how much growth we had last year, new growth, you talked about it in your chart, those over 100. Because to me, if you're over 3%, you're actually driving taxes down if your growth rate exceeds your CPI, right?
Yeah.
Do we have a handle on what that number was last year?
Growth is, growth in the past has run about 2.5%.
Okay.
Very preliminary number that I got from my computer tech yesterday says it's less this year than it was last year, but that's preliminary. So we're not sure of that. And why? I'm guessing because building materials are hard to come by, hard to find a contractor. Maybe there wasn't as much new growth. But another issue that we face, you hear of a TIF district. That's a tax incentive, taxes from that property or for the improvement in that property go to pay the developer's costs. The county, the city, the school, all those taxing entities can't count that growth in the tax district. And yeah, and we have a lot more growth in tax districts this year than we have in the past. So that growth is there, but we're losing it for what they can count. Rapid City hands out TIF districts like Halloween candy.
Help me understand on new construction. So last November, a house was half built.
Hey,
At most, then you're gonna set that tax value for 2022, payable in 23 at 50% of what it would be when
Yep.
it's fully built.
so it's what it's worth on November 1st. If it's half built, what is that half built house worth? And we have a checklist where we can mark off framing's done, roof is done, you know, and we come up with a percentage. And we tend to lean to the low side because if it's actually 50% done, you're not going to pay 50% of the value because it's work in progress. So we might hedge for 45%, whatever. Okay, so it's 45% of value on that day. So on November 1st, you always pay taxes a year following. And this is a big deal in how you calculate taxes and your house payment. On November 1st, your house is half finished. It's going to have a value as of half finished for 2022 taxes paid in 2023. The taxes that you're paying now for last year are bare land. A lot of times a bank will estimate the escrow based on the tax bill right now. You put a house on it, next year's tax bill is going to be huge. Expect that. Okay, so taxes paid in 2023 are half. There's going to be a big increase the following year.
Even though that house may be fully built by 22, they're really not gonna pay full taxes until 23, due in 4. Tax 23,
So-
paid in 24.
So it's half built on November 1st, but by Christmas, it's finished.
They got a whole year of free tax or half tax.
Well,
You'll get it.
maybe, yeah.
They'll get their money.
And that's saying you guys did that in November, so you may have looked at that house in September.
Yeah, and we don't, if we look at it the 1st of September, we might come back to it to see where it is close to November 1st, but we can't look at every property 3 times. So we try to get, that's why we do those building permits September, October, and we can't look at everything on one day. But the value we should have should represent at least what was there on November 1st. We are required by state law, like any appraiser, to consider all 3 approaches to value: the cost approach, sales comparison approach, and the income approach. We have 3 different models in our CAMA system. We don't use an income model for houses because nobody buys a house based on what it could rent for, except maybe caterers. Okay. The typical buyer doesn't. Okay, but we use an income model for apartment buildings, all right, because that's how people buy apartment buildings. And it's a little difficult to apply an income model because it might surprise you, there aren't too many people who are willing to share their income and expense statements with the county assessor. There's not a lot of data available out there for us. But we do have, for all other properties, a cost model and a sales comparison model. Cost approach estimates replacement cost new, less depreciation plus land, and sales comparison is a sales comparison. So for residential properties, we have a value indication from the sales and the cost approaches. For commercial properties, we have a value for the cost approach, and for apartment buildings, we've got cost and income. Like any appraiser out there, once we're done with that, we have to do a reconciliation and say, which one of these approaches to value is most applicable and most reliable for this property? But we have to set those into standards into the CAMA system. So the value that comes out considers that reconciliation standard that we've set.
I'm not a realtor, I'm a mortgage guy, so you can't lump me into these guys.
They're even worse.
I'll ask this question to these guys. Their client just finished a basement and didn't get a permit. Okay? Someone from your office knocks on their door. Do they have to let them in?
No, the law says that the county assessor has the right to inspect property for property tax purposes. Okay, now me and the homeowner might have a disagreement on exactly what inspect means, right? But we like to get inside every home. That way we know more about it. We like to meet with the property owner and we like to ask questions. We like to get inside, but we typically don't. I think we're running somewhere around 25% entry into houses. But we definitely do not insist on getting inside. We'll ask, and if they say no, okay, then we'll walk around the outside. Really, we are pretty good at valuing a property from the outside. If we know how big it is, how old it is, what the quality of construction is, and we're going to assume the outside is the same as the inside, what the condition is, assuming the outside is the same as the inside, and it probably is. And we know whether it's got a basement. We don't know whether the basement's finished, but we know if it's got a garage. If we know those big things, we can peg that value pretty close without being on the inside. Now, if you want to appeal your assessment, gotta let us inside, okay? Because when that goes to the appeal board and we stand up and say, "You didn't let us look at it," that doesn't look so good for you in an appeal. So when somebody appeals, we always want to go out and look at it first. Make sure we had the right data. There's no sense in arguing about what this house is worth unless we first establish that we got the right data on it. So what we do in a reappraisal project is we mail out a postcard and we say, we're going to be reappraising your neighborhood in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be going door to door, and we send out some appraisers and they walk down the sidewalk, they knock on the door. If nobody's home, and typically aren't because they're working, we'll leave a card in the door that tells you who is there and why and what assumptions we made. And then we walk around, maybe we walk around the house before we fill out the card. We walk around the house, make sure our measurements are right, make sure we've got decks and garages all right. We take a new picture, leave a card, and we go on to the next house. And the card says, give us a call. And we'll come back out and go inside if you'd like.
If you guys make a mistake on the assessment and go through the appeal process, is there a top limit as to the percentage you can change?
Nope. If yours was too low or too high, we're going to get it right this year, no matter what that change is. We want it right this year. There's no limit on how much it can change. Now, if you appeal and you think your property can't sell for what we have it assessed, we're going to ask to go out and look at it. We're going to make sure we got the right information. Then we're going to sit down with you and we're going to go over some sales. If we think, oh yeah, we didn't know it was like that, we're going to make a recommendation. We will not change a value, but we'll make a recommendation to the board to change it to this amount. And if you're happy with that, that just goes through the board and the board does it. If you're not happy, then you can stand up in front of the board and make whatever argument you want. And we'll stand up and say, this is what everything's selling for. We think that value is right. But if we think there's a reason to change that value, we will recommend the board do it. Once we mail assessment notices, we can't by law change values, but we can recommend to the board that they do. And if we think it's wrong, we'll make that recommendation. we'll even stand up and say, it's too low.
How often is that? That was my question. How often would you say that happens, Shannon, versus the reverse? Not as much as I think,
So-
maybe.
Every year, we probably get maybe 2 people every year that are completely pissed off because their value's too low. Well, it happens.
But how many come in and say, I'm too high, and you discover it's really too low?
Yep. So you have to file an appeal, and the law says you have to provide written notice of an appeal. We cannot change the value. The Board of Equalization can. We can't change the value. So at that point, if we discover, we didn't know you had a garage, okay, now you've clued in the fact that it's only going to go up, you tear up that written notice of appeal. Okay. But some people, this is what I say, there's 30% of the people out there that are going to appeal their assessment because there's something wrong, and there really is, and we'll fix it. And there's 30% of the people out there that are going to appeal their assessment just to see if they can get it lowered so they pay less taxes. And then there's 30% of the people out there that appeal every year because this is a hobby and they got nothing to do but argue their assessment. And 30% of those 30% are nasty. They fight with us, they fight with the Walmart checkout girl. Okay, we get those kinds of people. And so even if all the evidence says the value's too low, they're still going to go argue in front of the county commission.
I had to assess mine last year. Mine came in 17% higher and all my neighbors were like 4 to 5. And so I sent in all this paperwork. You guys recommended, oh, let's change it down to 6%. I was happy it went through and it was just that quick and easy.
Yep.
Yeah. It was-
Okay, but if you weren't happy with that, you still have the opportunity to appear in front of the commissioners and make an argument and do what you want. But if we think there's a reason to change it,
It
we
went
will
from
make that
17 to
recommendation.
6, and it was like, perfect, great.
Now, I will say that I really don't care what the percentage change was from last year to this year.
Right.
I only care about, is it market value this year?
Right.
And that's why I say next year, I'm going to abandon that. And I'm just going to say, is it right this year?
Right.
People appeal the change from one year to the next. And that's why this is a big issue, because our market went up so much. There's going to be big changes and people always appeal the change. I don't care what it changed.
Right.
Is it right this year?
Any other questions? Shannon, thank you so much for your time. That was really good, really educational. We appreciate it. So. By the way, we're going to share with online all the paperwork and the presentation too. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll send that out.
Owner of a business on there.
I just saw a thing on Facebook, I think.